What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Age of Quarantine. I'm David Castillo from Saint Vitus Bar. You can follow me at Confines World. We are going to be joined today by a really amazing musician. Now, get it right. I'm David Castillo. We're going to be joined by Dave Davidson. There's a lot of Davids in this episode, so stay tuned for that. But he's of the amazing band Revocation, as well, death thrash, fucking amazing, from Boston. And then we also have his new project, Gargoyl, which is a really sick grunge band. Really a different look for Dave. Super excited to talk to him about that. So cheers, everybody. Sorry we didn't make it last Friday. A little glitch with Contravoy, but we're going to get him on. So I think Dave's coming up over here. Let's bring him up. Hope everybody's well out there. Cheers, Italy. Dave. Hey, Dave, it's Dave.
Together again, united again.
It's us. Can you believe it? Dave, where are you today?
I'm just hanging out, in my room, my teaching room.
In your teaching room? Where is that? Is that in New York?
Yeah, Ridgewood.
Out in Ridgewood, New York. All right, beautiful. I didn't know, there's a lot of people moving around, a lot of different places nowadays. Could be different, could be whatever. So, man, wanted to talk to you about, usually when I start these off, we kind of just take the journey of your musical sort of experience on this planet. But, you guys tour a lot. Do you know where you would be today if you weren't at home? Were there any touring plans, other things that fell through?
Yeah, I think we would be just getting back from a European festival run. So I think we were planning on going out in mid-August, if memory serves. So yeah, we would have done the whole festival with Revocation. We would have done the whole festival circuit. And then I really can't say with Gargoyl because we have a new record coming out. But the decision to put the record out, was made when we were already in quarantine and stuff like that. So
Sure. I
can't say. I mean, I would assume I would have a Gargoyl tour, coming down the pipeline. If not for
or you just would have been able to make plans in a much more easier, succinct sort of way than in our current COVID / social justice crisis that we are late stage capitalism in. But let's start from the top. Did you grow up in the Boston area? Is that where you're from, or is that just where Revocation's from?
No, I grew up in Boston. Yeah.
Cool. So what was it like, just your earliest experiences with music? When did you think that, hey, you know what, I'm gravitating towards music? Even just as a kid, what was one of the earliest things where you're like, you know what, I think this is for me?
For me, I mean, what got me into playing guitar was Aerosmith. I remember watching. It was right around when the 9 Lives record came out, and there was a music video from Aerosmith on MTV, back when MTV played music and stuff.
That did happen, everyone.
I was so enamored with it. I mean, it just looked so cool. The Joe Perry with the Les Paul, and he was ripping a solo, and there was so much attitude. I was really into that. But even before that, I was actually really into Weird Al. Weird Al was really my first obsession as a kid. I fucking loved Weird Al. I still think Weird Al is cool as shit.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, Aerosmith was what that was my gateway drug into rock and roll. And then from there, I just kind of went further and further down the rabbit hole. Getting into sort of heavier and heavier bands. So I went from Aerosmith to Guns N' Roses. I worship Slash. He's still one of my favorite guitar players. I'm just so into his guitar style and tone and phrasing. He's so lyrical, but also he has a lot of technique as well. And I think I was just oh wow, really kind of inspired by his whole take on heavier rock. And, yeah, just the solos that he played are so iconic, everything from the Sweet Child of Mine solo to November Rain, and I was just all about Guns N' Roses. And then from there I got into Pantera, and Dime was it blew my mind even more. It was just getting more and more intense, more and more aggressive, more and more I guess technical, right? Even though it's not I'm listening to music for to be technical for the sake of technicality, but just to like my young kid brain, I just like had never seen anyone play a guitar like that. And then Pantera like really opened up the doors for me in terms of like finding out all these different like extreme metal bands, getting into death metal and black metal and thrash and all those different genres.
Was there anybody who kind of was like kind of leading you down that path at all? Like an older sibling, a friend, a neighbor? For me, it was like my best friend Josh, who I was actually just with. I'm in my parents' house on Long Island, so this is a perfect time to talk about it. But yeah, like Get a Grip, Aerosmith, and all that shit on MTV was like huge. I was like, whoa, these guys are badasses, and Alicia Silverstone stealing cars and shit. I'm like, I love this. And then, but my parents, I'm first generation Colombian. My parents really like mostly Spanish song music, just kind of in general. But Josh's parents were like hippies and shit. So like they had like Jimi Hendrix and the Allman Brothers and things of that nature. So that really kind of started schooling me, at least on like the more classic rock vibe. And then my brothers really like Guns N' Roses. So shout out.
Oh yeah, sounds like we had a little bit of like a similar musical journey. For me, I didn't have like any older siblings or anything like that. There was no like older brother that like got me into like shit. It was more just like I think I just kind of discovered it on my own, and I had like mutual friends, like my bandmates at the time were obviously listening to the same stuff. Like basically like I found the dudes like in high school or middle school that were like into the same shit as me, or at least were like I could just tell that they were, even if we didn't have like the same exact bands that we were into, like there was some kind of counterculture thing there that like we could link up on.
Yeah.
So yeah,
absolutely. Like I had a bunch of those friends growing up too. Like, and I feel like I would learn so much stuff. Like, I love skateboarding, and skateboarding was a big conduit to music for me. And it was like I'd meet skaters and other people from like other towns and stuff like that, and they'd be into like completely other stuff. But like, it would be like some facet of punk or some facet of hardcore or whatever have you.
Right.
So.
And then like basically like I had started up the band thing, and then once I was playing out, of course there was older dudes and bands that I would like look up to and shit like that, because like touring around, not touring necessarily just yet, but like playing local shows, playing with a bunch of different acts. So that was inspiring for me. And then like around the time I was 16, I started attending Boston Arts Academy, and that was when I was first introduced to jazz and like playing in like jazz band, big band. I was in a guitar ensemble.
So there was like this sort of a bit of formal training for you, like as far as the guitar journey of like learning that. What did that jazz playing kind of do for you, like as just like a player? Did that really just like open up a lot of technique and different things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, technique, phrasing, just overall musical philosophy. Just and it's a totally different language than metal. Metal to me is like a bit more like classical music, whereas jazz is more like improvisationally based and stuff like that, right? The goal in a metal band is like you're trying to deliver the same song every night with sort of the same intensity that it's on the record, whereas with jazz it's like more conversational. It's meant to be different every night. So that really was inspiring to me. Like learning solos from amazing guitar players like Wes Montgomery or Pat Martino, and really just sort of studying that language. And I mean, I'm still studying it. It takes a lot to really absorb, because there's just so much going on. And like I said, it's like learning like a whole other language. But I just found it to be so rewarding, so much history associated with that genre. It's incredibly rewarding to study and to listen to for me, and it's something that I've been working on, trying to get down sort of ever since high school, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting too when you're just playing other things, and then you never know how those things sort of play out in whatever it is you're doing. I feel like doing this show, one of the things that I'm always like, no experience is wasted. It just kind of ends up being part of like this little snowball that of experience that grows into this big thing, and adds maybe more technique or flavor, or you're learning part of this language, and maybe you slip a little bit of that into whatever it is you're doing. And it's really just always interesting to see how people are sort of charting the path. So you started playing in these school ensembles, things of that nature. When did you start putting together, I believe it was Cryptic Warning? Was that the first kind of iteration of Revocation, or like any like metal band that you were in, or was there something before that?
We actually were called Akel Dama before that. So like I have like a flyer somewhere, I think, with that logo on it. So yeah, we were Akel Dama, and then we went to Cryptic Warning, and then that became Revocation. So yeah, probably around the time I was 15, 16.
Wow. And to me, I always find it fascinating when people have been at least sort of in the same orbit, just growing musically with at least relatively similar people for a really long time. So what was the kind of purpose of starting Cryptic Warning, and like how did it start coming together and just playing and getting that?
Yeah, I mean, I just love fucking heavy metal and thrash as a kid. I mean, I just wanted to write my own music. Everything was so new, and I look back on those times very, with a lot of nostalgia, because when you're a kid and you're young and you're going through all these like hormonal changes and emotions, like music is like it was a real rock for me, and I know that it's such a bedrock for so many people. I mean, like, probably look back on the music that you listened to as a kid and always be into it, because it was just such a formative time in your life. Even if it's a guilty pleasure or whatever, right? So
yeah, and at a certain point, this stuff was like completely new to you. Like there was a time where we never listened to a death metal record. Like I never listened to a hardcore record. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And it's we're here all these years later. I mean, it obviously had a transformative, transcendental like effect almost. You're like, wow. So yeah, I do find myself. I mean, I can remember sometimes what I was wearing, where exactly I was, depending on certain musical experiences. It's a very strong sensory thing.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly strong. It's palpable. There's a quote that I like a lot. It says, "Genius is the recovery of childhood at will." Right. So I think there's just something like amazing to think back to those times where, yeah, you're feeling music on such an intense emotional level. I mean, it's just hitting you in all these different spots, and that's why I'm a musician today, because of the impact that music made on me as a young kid, and it's something that I constantly strive for in the music that I write. To always have that same passion, and to always kind of keep pushing things forward, because like when I was going down this, whether it was the thrash metal rabbit hole or the death metal rabbit hole, it's like, yeah, every single band was the first time I was ever hearing them, so it's like, holy shit, fucking Cannibal Corpse, like this is like blowing my mind, or like Gothenburg, like melodic death metal, like totally different style, right? Like there's all these different styles. So now I've obviously heard so much death metal and thrash. Like obviously you don't want to be jaded, but sometimes it can be difficult to find stuff that hits you in that same way that something from back in the day hit you, just because everything was so new. That being said, like I'll still go on my little comb through the crypts and go on my death metal exploration and find new bands. And there are a lot of bands out there that are doing some really killer, inspiring shit. But I guess, yeah, like always staying hungry, always looking for those points of inspiration to try to get back to that pure form of like, when you were a kid hearing music for the first time and hearing different genres, trying to have that kind of, before the real world comes and crushes your soul, like to get back to that childlike experience.
Sure. And I think that there's something really like fun about not knowing exactly what you're doing in a way, or like even developing your, like, maybe not even knowing what you're doing, but developing like your method, right? I think like we kind of start doing things, and then as like artists, you start getting maybe comfortable in certain levels of creativity or whatever it is that you're doing. And sometimes when you're first starting out, you really have to be a bit riskier, or you're maybe a little bit more naive, because you're just trying to kind of take some chances to like kind of arrive at something. And I felt that a lot when I started playing electronic music. I was like, man, I'm like deep in the forest and I'm just discovering a lot of stuff, but I love it so much because of that. And it's hard to sort of maybe get back to that, like, I don't give a fuck, playful vibe. I totally agree with that. So how did you meet the other guys to kind of start the group? Did you guys all just go to school together?
Yeah, it was high school.
Amazing. That's so funny. It's just like, okay, cool. Like I just landed here with these guys who would just be able to sort of do it. I always find that hysterical. Like, yeah, we went to high school together. Like, you won the lottery. You got a great death metal band out of it.
Right.
High school we get fucked up, but that's not a bad thing to kind of get out of it.
Yeah.
So then you started Revocation and doing, kind of Cryptic Warning kind of grew into Revocation, right? What was the kind of the process of changing the name and wanting to kind of go in a different route?
Yeah, for me it was more. I just felt the material was advancing at like a really fast pace and at like kind of a higher level, and we kind of had like sort of left that name behind. We had sort of made some mistakes along the way too, just like little rookie mistakes here and there with like getting like a band off the ground. Like we never even made like T-shirts for like Cryptic Warning or anything like that. So I think with Revocation it was like, all right, we've got like a clear idea of how like we want to sort of conduct business and everything like that, like as a band. And it was a fresh start in addition to the music, I think being like at a much like higher caliber. So we wanted like a new name, a fresh start, just to kind of match the shit that we were writing. And it turned out it was a really great decision. I think just even changing the name, it just got a little bit of buzz in the underground, and we really I think it inspired all of us collectively to really go like full speed ahead. And sort of, leave the kind of proto Revocation thing sort of aside and just really like go all in on this, like start to tour, start to, really make sure that our recordings are like a higher level, just get tighter as a band, get tighter as songwriters. So yeah, that was just the sort of evolution of that.
Yeah, and do you find too that there was just like a lot of personal decisions? Was it like, hey guys, let's take this whole thing up another level, and like there's a personal commitment there obviously too, like we're going to gear our life towards making Revocation. Are we all good with that here, right? Was that also kind of part of it, like, hey, we're kind of like we're going to sacrifice a lot to try and make this band work?
Yeah, it was I think the only thing on all of our minds collectively was just to get our music out there, work as hard as we can on our craft. It was something that we were all incredibly, passionate about. And yeah, I think that name change, that commitment, it just made us sort of, go full steam ahead.
Sure, absolutely. And was there anything that you were listening to at the time that was really kind of like, you said that, it seemed like you were kind of developing at this sort of rapid rate and it was sort of outstripping what Cryptic Warning was. What was it, what was the feeling of the time? Was it more like, man, I'm discovering new shit and now all of a sudden it's influencing me and my playing and I want to kind of like go forward? Or is it just like the mere fact that like, yo, we're not in high school anymore and we're like way fucking better musicians and we're just going to kind of go that way and we're better at writing songs and shit?
Probably a bit of both. I mean, I think being a good songwriter or a proficient musician, there's a blend of sort of the conscious and unconscious mind. You know what I mean? So maybe you're thinking about your influences in a specific way sometimes when you're writing, and maybe like you've got your influences so internalized at that point, or your technique more dialed in, so things start to come out naturally. I think the whole thing, like technique and songwriting, getting better at it is like just sort of training your mind and body to like hear the stuff that's going on in your head, and like these are the tools to get those ideas out. So however you can be proficient in like translating what's going on here, like through your hands, is the utmost importance, obviously. Like you don't want to be if you're hearing stuff and your technique doesn't allow you to like let those ideas come out, then you have to work more on on your technique or whatever. And then, you know, some people just have a lot of technique, but they don't have like the ideas behind it. So it's just sort of like, it's sort of maybe like very like impressive from a technical standpoint, but it's not like moving. So I always try to think about like having both in the music. So it's not just technique for the sake of technique, but you know, it's like serving a purpose. It's serving the music.
Yeah, I think that that's a really great point, and I think something to really, you know, drive home to, you know, like our viewers and stuff like that too. I mean, what I look for more than anything, like when I'm booking bands or I'm listening, you know, just in general, is I'm looking for a feeling, right? And like you said, like you don't want to sacrifice being like moving, or I call it like just being like visceral, you know, for hey, look what I can do with my left hand, you know, like I don't really give a shit that much. I care about the song. And to be said, I don't play guitar, I don't play bass, I don't play drums. So maybe, you know, for some people that's like, whoa, I want to like see this virtuosity. But at least for me, I'm like looking for moving. And then you could be the Dillinger Escape Plan and do that, or you could be like Nirvana, you know, and there's a lot of things in between, you know?
Yeah, virtuosity for sure. I think is. I mean, it's something that's always had like an impact on me, but I think that virtuosity was an emotional impact. I mean, I think you know, a wow factor can be an emotional impact. You know what I mean? You know, just like something that just totally blows your mind and just like makes you think philosophically about like the limitations of the human body. You know what I mean? Like when you see something that you like actually like can't believe your eyes, like certain like death metal drummers or you know,
you're like, wow, the drummer of Behemoth.
Right, you're like, holy shit. So like that makes you sort of question things. So I think, you know, virtuosity can have an emotional impact. I guess it's just, you know, technique for the sake of technique in and of itself doesn't always make the best music. Is what I'm sort of getting at there. But you know, certainly Revocation is a very technical band. But again, it's
but it doesn't sacrifice.
It's coming out in a natural way, hopefully.
Yeah, it doesn't sacrifice the power, you know, like live or whatever, you know. I don't want to see people struggling to kind of pull off their songs. I want to see them dominate them and bring them with like a certain ferocity and confidence that like just is like, yo, this is what happens, you know. We don't give extra credit for you know, just left hand jargon. Left hand path, yes. Left hand jargon, no. That's the word. So you know, this plan, I mean, for you guys really went straight according to plan. You guys kind of signed to Relapse really early on, right? With Revocation, and things started to sort of happen. When did you feel like, oh shit, like we really, like, this is starting to happen, we got some momentum, and like our peers and maybe other people are starting to take notice? Is there anything where it kind of stands out to you, or like, oh, okay, we're kind of like on a new level of the ride here, and we're really excited to be taking it?
Yeah, I mean, there was so many moments like that, to be honest, in the journey that Revocation had. I mean, just putting out like our first demo that we self-released and having people, you know, react to it like at shows or whatever, felt like, oh wow, like we've made it, right? You know, putting out our first, we self-released our debut record, Empire of the Obscene. You know, we did everything from the artwork to everything like that. We were very involved. I mean, it was all self-released. We had to do all that shit, and you know, that felt like a milestone. Of course, signing with Relapse was a dream come true. I mean, I was a huge fan of the label. It was like an honor to be a part of that. And then, you know, right from getting signed to Relapse, it was like we're on tour with like Saint Vitus in Europe, and you know, we were doing stuff with Black Dahlia Murder and like Behemoth in Japan with Upper Cowboy, all these different bands. Sort of like right off the gate, it was like, oh wow, like the game has changed. And I think every record since then that we put out, because there's the sort of like, I guess, sort of like the first period, like when you're on more of a public stage, that I'm putting aside like the years that we spent just touring locally and stuff like that and playing shows. But like when you're on that bigger sort of national or international stage, so many people just like haven't heard of you, so you kind of have to like introduce your band to people, like, and you know, you have to bring it live, you have to show people like why they care. And so I think, you know, a lot of it was just like winning crowds over that have never seen us before. I mean, I remember like our first European tour, there was like so many fans that like you know, were there for Dying Fetus, right? And they were like, who's this fucking opener? But every tour that we do, you know, we've made fans, and we've gotten to the point where now we can go out and we can headline, you know, in Europe or, you know, in the U.S. and Canada. So it was a slow build, but I feel like, you know, with every single record, I could feel the band like going up like another rung on the ladder, or sometimes like several rungs. Yeah. So it's kind of cool to like see that climb. You know, we weren't that like pop hit band where like, you know, we put out a single and it's like, you know, crazy fame overnight or whatever, you know, like that's just like not, I think, how the death metal works that too often. Sometimes, you know, bands
sure. But in reality, I mean, you know, I booked you guys plenty of times. You guys have played Vitus a lot of times. It was mostly on like headlining runs, and that's really where I would sort of see it as well. I'd be like, yo, Revocation's great. Oh shit, new record, cool, it's banging, great artwork, looks great, people are talking about it. And it was like, then they're off, and then headline tour, and then this was the last show, and then off, and then, you know, and then that was before. And it was really great to see you guys continue to work and just and grow, you know, time in and time out, to where, you know, you're selling the place out, and it's like people are going wild in there, and I'm just like, wow, this is fucking great. And you know, just so happy for the you know, meeting you guys and just watching it. That's always one of my greatest joys. It means that, you know, the bands are doing great, but then we are too, and we're doing our job as well. So just seeing that though is like, you just kind of can sort of see how things are building and chart the path, and hopefully those things work. But you guys obviously have to deliver on the records. When you started off mostly as a 3-piece and then kind of grew to a 4-piece, right? Around what time did that sort of happen to add the second guitar?
That was like right when the touring cycle for Existence is Futile started. So like shortly after we signed to Relapse, I think it was another one of those moments where collectively we were all like, all right, let's take this to the next level, add like another guitar player, you know, fill out that live sound. Sure. And yeah, and so we became a 4-piece, and then on Chaos of Forms, like by the time that record rolled around, it was like, you know, we were like officially like a 4-piece or whatever.
Got it. Yeah. So then that sort of happened. And yeah, because I've seen you mostly 4-piece, and now you guys have been writing as a 3-piece lately, or is it a little bit of a return? How does that feel?
Well, I was already writing some material for Revocation before Dan decided to leave the band. So I don't know if it's going to really change too much of the writing process. I mean, we are planning on getting another touring guitar player when the time comes. You know, we're not putting out like official like auditions or anything like that yet, just because there's no shows to do. And certainly I don't think it would be right for the band just to bring in a guy to write with, you know what I mean? It would just feel weird. So and I'm going to write the next record. I'm going to write it still for 2 guitar parts. But who knows? I mean, like, I was already kind of thinking like, oh, it might be cool to do like a solo section or something like that on the new record that has like just bass like underneath it, to kind of go back to a more sort of throwback Revocation sort of trio style that was like that could be heard on like Existence is Futile, and I think we did some stuff on Chaos too. So you know, my gears are just turning. I think anytime like a lineup change happens like that, like it's good to kind of rethink things. But at the same time, I've already got like so much material written for the band that I don't think it's going to change up all that much. There might be a few little things that might get inspired because of this new lineup change, but for the most part, it'll be the same.
Sure, yeah, and it's just kind of interesting too. You know, like I feel that's definitely a thing too, right? It's like, oh, okay, you know, we're you know, I feel like you write more and more stuff, and then you're like, you know what, maybe that second guitar, and you're right, like, you know, some bands, they can really fill things out, but depending, and that's an interesting sort of look. And I agree with what you're saying too. You know, adding a bandmate's a very like, you know, of course you could be like a hired person or whatever, but there's like an organic thing. You got to really kind of feel that somebody can really like play with you, and you're not going to really know until you do a couple of tours with them. So obviously, as fans, we're all excited to kind of, see whatever you come up with, and we'll be here, waiting on all that stuff, and that's great. I had a question for you guys regarding, like the artwork and stuff that you guys do, because the Revocation releases, I feel like, always kind of come packed with like a really distinct, like kind of cool vibe. How do you pick, the artists that you work with and stuff like that?
Sure. So for I'll actually show this off in a minute because I have the original for Deathless behind me right now.
Oh, nice. I was about to say, I was like, that looks like without, I was like, there's nothing on it. That might just be the artwork.
I haven't really shown this off ever, so here you get the exclusive date because you asked. So this is the oil painting. It's like on canvas for Deathless. So this is this is actually super sick. I fucking love the detail is just fucking insane.
Wow.
So this painting was done by Tom Strom. Tom has done like the past 3 album covers for us. So he did that was the first one. Tom's actually my tattoo artist, so he does like all my shit. Super killer artist. Go follow Tom Strom. He's an amazing, incredible artist. He's tattooing out of Scotland right now. I think he just opened up a shop called Castillo. Anyway, shout out to Tom. And
cheers, Tom. To you, man. You do great work.
Yep, fantastic artist. You can see he's got his signature here with the date.
That's so sick.
So yeah, he had been tattooing me for several years, and I was like, Tom, I need you to do the next record. Like, your art is so sick. He's like this psycho, but like he'll make his own needles. He's like so dedicated to the craft of tattooing, but he's also like a sculptor, and he does oil painting and watercolor. All of these different mediums. So he's just like an artist through and through. So I kind of explained to him the loose concept behind the lyrics, but also kind of let him have his own interpretation of it. So he did this like really awesome, like essentially like tombstone like monolith with this like eerie sort of staircase. He really turned me on to an artist named Zdzislaw Beksinski, who's a fantastic Polish painter. So like this has a little bit of a Beksinski vibe with some of the color scheme and whatnot. Actually, little hidden Easter eggs for people that are watching, if you care to know. Like this skull here, there's a couple cool things going on, but it's got windows for eyes. And where the hell is it on me? Oh yeah, so this skull right here has the windows for eyes too. I was actually the first.
Oh God! Oh wow! So he incorporated your tattoo into that artwork, basically.
Yes, and this windows for eyes theme has been like a theme of his for a while, and I'm pretty sure I was the first person he tattooed that on. So it's kind of interesting that it's like.
So this is a real personal relationship that has been marinating for, like a decade, basically, of tattooing and friendship, and then working with the band and stuff like that. I always love that because it feels like. Yeah, like I felt like as you guys started hitting your stride too, there was like an aesthetic stride that started to be hit as well, like in all of the artwork and all of, it just came across really beautifully. And I wanted to know kind of who and what was sort of behind that. So this is great, man.
Oh, awesome. There's a couple more things that are kind of cool. So like these windows for eyes, and there's also like this skeleton is like the only one, like they're kind of all sort of floating out here. This skeleton is the only one that has hair. That's actually like Tom's severed head. So he did like a self-portrait of himself in that. So that little part of that's supposed to be Tom's skull flying up. And then the final thing, which I thought was really cool and like kind of eerie, the very first track on the record, and I didn't actually talk to Tom about this, but the first track on the record is called A Death Ode to the Grave. That song is about 2 things. About Charon, the ferryman who would, take souls across the river Styx into like the afterlife, and also about my time when I used to work in a hospital as a transport. Like part of my job was taking deceased patients to the morgue. So like I kind of like melded the myth of Charon with sort of my own like I was the ferryman or whatever. Anyway, like in those in that sort of lore that. And I think this was actually done like in practice as well. But you had to pay the ferryman, so people would be like buried with like coins in their, like over their eyes, or like coins in their mouth. It was like sort of a superstition, but like when you get to the ferryman in the afterlife, you're going to have the coin there, and he's going to take that, and that's the payment. So it was something that people like, did back in the day as part of like a burial rite. You notice, and I didn't mention this to Tom. Tom put a coin in the eye of the thing without me even really talking to him about it. So like, just like on the same tip. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I love that though. When you just kind of, I feel like oftentimes in whether it's musical movements or other things like that, people are kind of just hitting on similar themes, and like certain things start cropping up in connections, and like there's these just sort of frequencies that different people kind of start tuning into, of just, of art and music and stuff like that. And then you kind of start feeling it. And then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 bands or 5 bands that maybe never heard of each other, or other sides of the world, are doing like rather similar things. And especially before the internet, that would happen. It would be like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. But I think that there's something out there, ideas out there to be discovered and found that fit certain contexts in time and feeling and stuff. So that is really amazing. Thank you for taking us through that little tour there. That's really cool.
My pleasure. You get the exclusive, Dave.
Yeah, just, us Daves, we stick together on the exclusive.
We stick together, man. That's how it's all about.
So yeah, I mean, we've kind of covered the fact that you've been in Revocation for, pretty much playing with the same people since high school. So this is close to what, 16, 17 years worth of a band with some folks, And recently you started a new band, Gargoyl, right? Which I heard a couple of years ago, actually. I think that, you contacted me about potentially doing a show and stuff, and I threw it on, and I was really pleasantly surprised at how different and cool it really was. It gave me kind of like a heavy kind of grunge vibe, maybe a little bit Seattle, a little Cantrell-esque, a little bit Soundgarden-esque, but then it also had like its little like kind of prog flourishes and moments to it too, which I thought was really great. And the vocals are just so great, harmonies and really sung stuff. I mean, guys, Gargoyle is great. If you really want to check out some like sweet kind of like grungy like rock music, that's really what the impression I got. And I was like, whoa, this is fucking right up my alley. I grew up a disciple of like 120 Minutes and Headbangers Ball and stuff like that, sitting in the room next door to this one in beautiful Long Island, just fucking trying to figure stuff out. What kind of led you to kind of start exploring that sound and just doing another band outside of, I guess, the things that we would typically associate with Dave Davidson?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, Dave, thank you so much, for all the kind words so far. I really appreciate it. It's always great, like-minded musicians, people that have similar backgrounds, really can kind of get where you're coming from and appreciate that. For me, I've just been a fan of grunge and rock and prog my whole life. I mean, obviously, I love my metal, but I grew up listening to Alice in Chains, to Faith No More, Soundgarden, like all these bands that were like, I don't know, they just had such like a vibe. Like there was just such a magical moment in time when that was all happening. For me, Alice in Chains is like still one of my favorite bands of all time. They're timeless to me. I can always put on a different record and vibe out with it. So. We're certainly not trying to be an Alice in Chains cover band by any means, right? Like any project that I'm involved in, I want it to have its own very unique voice. So I think what's been cool for me is like so many people are getting different things out of the music. So some people were like, oh, this reminds me of like Queens of the Stone Age meets Voivod, and someone was like, oh, this reminds me of like a black metal Alice in Chains, or this or that, or like just Rhythmia meets Faith No More, like all these different takes on the music, which is so cool. I mean, for me, I think we're like a prog rock band in the true sense of the word, right? So not trying to fit into any preconceived notions of what prog rock means, but just literally like we're a progressive rock band. We're trying to push the boundaries of rock in different directions. There's a lot of dynamics on this record. For me, one of the driving factors in starting Gargoyl was to have a vehicle for these other influences, and to really like not just like put singing in a song that already has screaming to kind of create some dynamic, but to really go full-fledged into this rock medium. And it's great. I mean, working with Luke is fantastic. He's an amazing musician. Everyone in the band is just like a total.
How did you and Luke link up? Like, how did that relationship start?
So Luke and I linked up. Ayahuasca, his other band, opened for Revocation in Toronto, and we just kind of got to talking. We had a lot of similar influences. We were liked a lot of the same kind of weird esoteric shit like Virus from Norway and stuff like that. And we just
I love Virus. One of the great bands that we got an opportunity to play at Vitus, and they were so fucking great.
Yeah, I'm so sad I missed that show. I wish I saw that. I think I was on tour. But anyway, so all these different influences, but through this lens of rock or prog rock, and so it's a really dynamic record. The record's coming out October 9th, by the way, on Season and Mist. If anyone's interested in checking it out, it's Gargoyl with no E at the end, so just stop at the L. And yeah, I'm just so excited to get this project out. It scratches a very different itch for me than Revocation. I think it shows lots of different sides to me as a player. My rock side, my more sort of dynamic side. There's some songs that are, not full on acoustic instruments, but like all clean. Like our latest single, Wraith, is, there's no distorted guitar. It was played all on my 335, so it's got like a much sort of warmer, jazzier kind of tone, I guess. So it's cool to have this new project out there that I can really let these influences, thrive and flourish and show a different side of myself as a musician. Because I do have a very diverse taste in music, and I don't want to be known just as Dave from Revocation. I want to be known as myself as an individual, as a musician that's capable of working in different artistic mediums. So that's sort of the goal.
Totally. I mean, and I think that's something that's really important to sort of, for people to just kind of feel and realize is I think we all listen to a lot of different things, and all of it sort of seeps into different parts of different musics that you sort of make. And you could still kind of sense Dave's sort of kind of metal flourishes and other things like that. And I feel but at the same time, it's in a completely different context. And that to me is always really cool. You can just kind of, there's a certain feeling in people's hands that when they play, you can kind of just feel it. And I felt like it was very much you, but just it kind of doing this in a completely different arena. And that's really cool. And also I feel like it makes, going outside, playing with of yourself or your band and playing with different people, checking different kind of styles out and just putting yourself in different contexts. It just makes you stronger whenever you come back to whatever it is you're doing. You're kind of exercising, if you're one body, if you're just working out your right side, it's kind of weird. But then if you kind of get everything going, then you're fully strong, right? Did you feel like it was nice to kind of get outside of that? And did you feel like when you started it, you kind of felt a little bit more wow, I learned a couple of different interesting things there, just exploring this stuff. I'm going to maybe even take some of that back to Revocation.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot there, and I agree with so much of what you're saying. I mean, for me, at the end of the day, it was just something that needed to happen. It was, it was something clearly in the back of my mind, floating around in this sort of creative ether that just needed to get out there. So yeah, I think now that I've embraced this project and I've shown this other side, I'm looking forward to you know, really diving in and writing that next Revocation record and feeling truly inspired to like dedicate my time to work on that, to write it when the time comes, because I've gotten, you know, this other music out of my system, and out to the world. And yeah, I think you learn anytime you write a song, I think there's a learning opportunity to be had there. You know, it's a way to sort of further strengthen your creative voice, so your musical identity, and certainly working with other people is always you know, inspiring and a learning experience. You know, working with our drummer James Nurl, fantastic metal rock drummer. He's got like jazz chops. You know, our bassist Brett Lear. He's incredible, great vocalist, as well as being a really creative bass player. He's come up with bass lines, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I would never have thought of that. And then Luke is just like a powerhouse of a guitar player and a singer. I mean, I can come up with like some really weird ass shit, like very like sort of dissonant chords or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know how he's gonna make this sound beautiful, because this is like, you know, very kind of like abrasive sounding almost, and he'll find this like beautiful haunting melody to put over some of the stuff that I was coming up with. It was just, you know, it's inspired me to write more. So yeah, I want to write more Gargoyl shit. I want to write more Revocation stuff. It's that creative process is what I live for, and it's what keeps me going. It's like part of like a therapy for me, I feel like, you know, especially like in times like these, like when people like, I think, really need outlets. So yeah, I'm very thankful that I have a couple different projects now that I'm sort of equally passionate about, but for different reasons.
Sure, and flexing different things, like you said, you're like, you know, you're sitting here writing these really dissonant melodies, wondering what Luke's going to sort of do, going off of them and stuff like that. And it's really just finding sometimes those people like in your life who you might come across, right? You said, oh, we just got on, we met at a show, you know, ayahuasca playing with Revocation, stuff like that. But all of a sudden, when you sometimes meet somebody that you know, you click with, it just can open the door to maybe another part of your brain, you know, or you just sort of kind of connect with them on a particular level, and you're like, wow, okay, cool, I need that part of my musical sort of persona to just like come out, and maybe you, like you said, you probably had it stewing for a while, but it's nice to find that person that kind of breathes life into that, right?
Oh, for sure, 100%. You know, I mean, music is, I think it's about the collective. You know, I mean, it's certainly, you know, great when you've got like, you know, one person that's like writing, and I've sort of been that, you know, creative driving force, you know, in Revocation and on certain songs with Gargoyl. But like when you come together as a collective and you kind of inspire each other, you know, like, you know, sending off a song to Luke and he comes back with this like masterpiece of vocal melodies and harmonies over it, that just inspires me to work more. It pushes me further to like, oh, like what can I come up with next? So it's incredibly inspiring. And you know, to that end, you know, I don't know if for sure this is like a direct, or maybe an indirect influence from the jazz realm that I'm into, but you know, those guys were like sort of the concept of like one concrete band sort of being together forever that's more of like a rock or a metal concept, even though bands have lineup changes, but it's almost like cake with jazz, that like people are going to play with other people. You know what I mean? Like if you, any of the on-call guys in the New York scene, they're not, I mean, sure they have certain guys that they like to play with often, but they're constantly gigging with different people on people's records. You know, collaborating with all these different individuals. So that to me is very inspiring, because like, you know, with Aerosmith, like you don't want the band to break up. You want it to be the guys, you know, like it wouldn't feel right without Tom Hamilton or with, you know, without Joey Kramer or Brad Whitford, right? You want that collective band there. Whereas like, you know, whether it was, you know, Miles Davis or Coltrane, you know, there was different artistic periods that they had, you know, a set band for, but they were mixing it up and, you know, bringing in different guys, all in the name of, for the sake of creativity, right? You know, okay, we did this, we made this music, it lived in this particular time period, and now for everyone's benefit, we all need to go our separate ways and start creating music and art, you know, with other people to bring in new life. I mean, with Miles Davis's band, like, he was always on the hunt for those like next young guys. I mean, like, it's like discovering like Herbie Hancock when he was like just like a kid, like bringing him in, and like, you know, all the Tony Williams, like I forget how old Tony Williams was when he was in his band, but he was like, I think he was like 19 or something like that when he joined like Miles's band. So it's like, it's that youthful exuberance that you're bringing in too, you know, like from people from maybe different generations, and like and they have different thoughts. I mean, I'm going off on a whole tangent here, but it's very
no,
inspiring.
but I mean, it's great though, and you're making a really great point too. And even like the authorship of songs is like, that's a very blurred line as well, right? So many people in like, let's say, folk music have covered a million songs a million different ways and different artists, and it's fine to do like your renditions in your particular way, and it's not some sort of like sacrilegious sort of thing or whatever. It doesn't, you know, speak out of turn. And a lot of the Latin music that I listen to, you know, the Fania All Stars is just that. It's all stars of like a million different bands, and they're writing different things. And it's like, I want these guys from Cuba, these guys from DR, these guys from Uptown New York, you know, and like, and we're going to make this group, and then, you know, just a lot of people sitting in and out, and they're very big bands, you know, Latin bands, salsa bands, you know, especially, or, you know, if you got the budget, you know, they can be, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 people, no problem. So, you know, you need people to make it all work in a very different way. So I definitely agree with you on that level. And it's a really salient point. Different musical cultures and different sort of things, and how you sort of approach stuff is always interesting. Just walking into a room with different people and trying to make some music, and you just learn things, man. And it's a beautiful thing.
And thinking about the audience as well, just really quickly to follow up on that, you know, it's like once you make the music and you put it out there into the world, yeah, it's your music, but it's also now everyone else's music as well. You know what I mean? Like once you put it out there, like everyone now has some ownership of that. You know, and like you could, my point being, like, you could write a song about one thing, but someone, like, it reminds that person, you know, some listener about something that happened to them personally. So like all of a sudden, like, it's their like your personal experience is being filtered through their personal experience, and they can feel it like just as palpably maybe as you can when you wrote it. So I think that's like a really magical part of music. Is like, I mean, we all live in a collective, right? So like, and music is so much about interacting. It's, you know, that it sounds cliche, but like that, you know, universal language, right? You know, someone that could not speak English or whatever could be listening to a metal song, right, and like know every single word and feel it in this like really palpable way. So I just think that's so incredible about music and how humans interact.
I mean, that's how people learn languages at times, you know?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean, I remember listening to Sepultura records, and I speak Spanish, but I don't speak Portuguese, you know? And I'm like, man, I'm trying to figure this out and stuff. And I started trying to figure out like what they were singing about in Portuguese, you know, because I was like a fan that, like, I fucking need to know, Max, you know, like what's going on here, you know. I could understand that policia meant police, but then besides that, there's a lot of other things going on. So I always thought that you're totally right, and the things that can kind of compel you to sort of see different worlds and stuff. So Gargoyl, just to kind of get back to that a little bit, you guys are releasing a record and stuff. Was it finished before this whole situation happened? And what was the kind of decision there to just kind of move forward to put it out?
Yeah, we like, I was on tour with Revocation. We were doing like a whole kind of crazy world tour. We did, you know, Japan and Australia and Hawaii. And this was like right when shit was like popping off with coronavirus. Like I remember even leaving, and like one of my buddies is like works at in the hospital here, and like was hearing things coming down the pipeline. He was like, "Sure, you want to be traveling through like international airports like every day?" And I'm like, "It'll be fine, you know, whatever." And then it obviously like exploded, and like, you know, I returned home, and I feel like a week later it was like the coronavirus sort of bomb went off. So I remember being in Australia, and like we were like sort of finalizing the artwork for the Gargoyl record, like right around that time. So the music had been recorded. We had gone through the mixing phase. We were kind of getting it mastered and getting the final artwork tweaked like ever so slightly during that time. So yeah, it was done. And then like, you know, we were looking kind of at the situation. It's like, all right, we're not going to be able to tour for who knows how long, you know, a year, 2 years. And we had already been writing that music for a couple of years leading up to, like you said, you know, we're talking about booking a Gargoyl show and listening to that music. And that was a couple of years ago. So for all of us collectively, it's like, we're not going to be able to tour on this. Like, we just need to, like, accept that. Like, once things open up, I'd love to be able to tour with this record. But rather than, like, sit on it and just, like, wait, I wanted to get that music out there and let people hear it. And I think it's music that hopefully people really vibe with right now. There's lots of themes of sort of anxiety and like dystopian sort of futures on the record, sort of loosely. So and this was before any of this should happen. So I think Luke, as a creative person, was just sort of feeling this feeling in the air. So hopefully it's a cathartic release for some people. You know, it deals with some sort of heavy issues, and the music is certainly, like, I think, you know, emotionally heavy, but that's some of my favorite music to, like, have a release to. Like, you know, Alice in Chains is, like, dark and depressing as fuck, but, like, it makes me feel, it gives me an uplifting feeling, like a cathartic feeling, because I'm sort of confronting those emotions and, like, you know, confronting them, like, in a healthy way through music. So
yeah, I think
this
it's
was like
cool
clearly
to know that other people feel. Yeah, I just think it's cool that other people can know that other people feel like them, you know, and that you can feel that, you know, through music and stuff like that. So, and for us, you know, at a certain point too, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot too, as a musician who's also got a couple of things that I've been working on with Confines, and, you know, the clubs are closed. It's kind of hard. But I was like, you know, at a certain point, like, we have to just maybe move forward even for ourselves, right? We have stuff that's been marinating in our minds for so long, and just to at least kind of give it this birth, you know, for a lot of folks who, if you don't make music, if you do, you know that, like, you have this thing kind of in the back of your head all the time or hanging over you. It's like good to just kind of let it out into the world. And although it's kind of hard to kind of do the normal things we do around it, we're really lucky that, you know, cool bands are still kind of releasing some music, and we have, you know, great new things to listen to. And so I'm stoked about Gargoyl, and I'm looking forward to hearing it when it comes out, and, you know, just kind of appreciating the fact that, you know, people are moving forward a little bit at the very least. And, like, you know, I got nothing but time to listen. So that's really great. So we got like 2 minutes left before Instagram gives us the old heave ho.
Oh, right.
And I just want to say, you know, thank you very much, Dave, for joining us. It's always really cool talking to you. Always just great running into you whenever I do get to. Usually that's like fairly often, and we're hanging in Brooklyn, and, you know, seeing seeing you around the way. And, you know, good luck with everything with Gargoyl. We're all also, you know, looking forward to whatever you conjure up for Revocation. And yeah, thanks a lot for joining us, man.
Thanks so much for having me, David. Really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, we'll have to get a beer soon, man, and just shoot the shit.
Absolutely, dude. Cheers, bud.
Have a great
night. Take care. Be easy.